down.
Yeah, I know, it's so sweet.
So
sweet. Welcome back
so sweet.
to another episode of the Cinema Discovery. I'm doing this radio voice for you guys. I'm Stephen Billings.
I was going to do it too.
Oh, was you going to do it too? Copier?
Cinema Discovery Project.
Copy it. Jeez. But yes, welcome back to another episode of the Cinema Discovery Project, where we talk about, films we love, sometimes films we don't love. We haven't really gotten to a film we don't love yet, but we've been focusing mostly on some classics and some hidden gems, and now we're back again. I'm Stephen Billings, and with me as always is Andrew Cabral. What's up, man?
Hello. I'm back once again. It's been a quick 2 weeks, I would say.
Well, I get probably quicker for you because you've been a little bit under the weather, right?
Under the weather, yeah. I've been sick for the last 2 weeks. Literally, 2 days removed from our last episode, I got really sick and still am sick. So if you notice my voice change, if you pay attention to those things, you'll notice why. Also, if my voice kind of fades out, you also know why.
Yeah, that means Andrew might have died, but I'm going to finish the episode anyway.
I know, yeah, if anything happens to me, Steven's just going to prop me up like
I'm just gonna have to pretend he wasn't. I'm just gonna finish the episode and then I'll worry about it afterwards, because this is an important episode, because this is about one of the great filmmakers of all time.
It is, without a doubt. I mean, that kind of gets overblown a lot, where we're saying, "Oh, greatest of all time, best ever."
And some might not agree with us, but I honestly think this is one of the greats. So personally,
yeah, without a shadow of a doubt, without hesitation, Satyajit Ray is one of the best of all time. And I only discovered him myself over the last 5 years or so, in that time frame. And it's amazing the way cinema works sometimes, is because you think you've seen a lot of movies, you think you've seen a lot of filmmakers, you think you've man, what haven't I seen?
We can get arrogant sometimes.
You can get arrogant. Yeah. You can get really arrogant and just don't you haven't explored certain avenues. But then sometimes you discover something and it just blows you away, and you're like, where has this been this whole time?
When I discovered Satyajit Ray, it really reignited my love of cinema and also just wanting to explore international cinema. Honestly, I mean, it really did. I mean, we've talked about it before. The Criterion Collection has put out some releases, and specifically when the Apu trilogy was released was when it it was the first ones I saw. And I bought them I bought that box set just on a whim, blind buy, just because people were talking about it and were super excited when it was announced. Yeah. And I had no idea what it was. I'll be honest, when it comes to my foreign cinema, lexicon or things that I've, delved into, Indian cinema isn't one of them. Yeah.
I haven't delved into Bollywood or anything like that. I mean, when it comes to Eastern cinema, I've delved into, Japanese cinema, obviously, with Kurosawa and Ozu, Korean cinema with, Chan-wook Park, and, of course, others, and Chinese cinema as well with, Ang Lee.
And obviously Italian and
yeah, and then, of course, mostly European cinema.
Yeah, mostly European, maybe a little bit of Russian, Yeah,
the French, Italian. That's kind of I think that's foreign cinema 101.
Yeah.
I think it's European cinema.
Well, there's some of that. I mean, the thing is though, we probably have focused on that area a lot with international cinema. India's got probably the biggest industry other than America.
I think cinema. Bollywood, I believe, is the second biggest movie industry in the world, and no one really kind of pays attention to it outside, because, when it comes to, American ideals, and I think when it comes to American entertainment, people always stay within our borders and don't really open themselves up to, foreign language stuff. Sometimes they don't even open themselves up to British cinema and British television and stuff like that. They really stay close to home. But what is interesting about the films of Satyajit Ray, and I think I'm going to start calling him Satyajit Ray.
Yeah, you're right. I need to try to start calling him by the way it's kind of,
I've seen both pronunciations. I've seen Ray and I've seen Rai. And what I've learned is that when I did the Apu trilogy box set review on my channel, my YouTube channel years ago, is I got so many comments, still get comments coming in from people from India, and one of them said that it's pronounced the way Audrey Hepburn pronounced it when Satyajit Ray was given his honorary Oscar. And I'm like, okay, if that's the way it's pronounced, then that's the way I'll pronounce it. And so I'll start saying Rai from now on. But what I'm getting at is that his cinema isn't Bollywood cinema. His cinema is very Western.
Yeah.
And his influences, I think, were very Western.
Yeah.
And by Western, I mean like...
American cinema and
Italian neorealism and French cinema, specifically that of Jean Renoir, who he met when Renoir went to India to film his film The River.
Yeah.
And I believe Satyajit Ray was the one who did like location scouting for that film. And at that time, he had the idea for, Pathar Panchali, and he asked Renoir about it, and Renoir told him, to go for it, to do it. And this was, I think, like the late 40s.
Yeah. He was very influenced by a lot of different cinema, but you can tell there is an American influence too. He was a big fan of them, some of them guys early on, like John Ford and because you can in this movie you'll see like even the fact that he uses some English in this movie. There's an English Indian character that and the characters will sometimes jump into certain phrases and say them in English because it's an English saying or something like that. But it's Satyajit Ray definitely I think noticeably takes a lot of influence from other cinema, because especially the pacing. I'll say that, especially with American cinema. I think his movies are paced so well that they pace very close to how American cinema is.
Really? What is interesting is I feel like his films are paced even more patiently than American cinema.
Maybe. I mean, I would say nowadays, it's not even close because American cinema is so frenetic now. But back then, you could say that his movies are slow, maybe closer to like an Ozu, but I don't think they're as slow as Ozu. I don't think they're nearly as... I would say Ozu's a lot more meditative, and I think Rai puts a little bit more... he paces them a little quicker. Maybe not all of his films, but from what I've seen so far, he definitely is aware that you want to keep the... You don't want to necessarily... I don't want to say bore your audience, but you want to also keep them thinking and not put them to sleep. I think he straddles a line, and I think it makes for his own style and his own, his own thing. I mean, I love his work, and nothing in this. I can't really decide, but I would say at this point right now, this movie we're going to talk about today is my favorite of his movies.
I did not know that.
It's between
I didn't know that when I picked it up.
And The Hero. But this one's pretty high up there. I would say it's maybe the best for me.
I think I may be pretty close to your mindset in terms of this being my favorite of what I've seen. I mean, we've delved into a lot of his movies, I think, over the last couple of years, both of us, and this is... And
there's a lot I haven't seen because there isn't a lot of great restorations of his movies. There's some that are out there, but they're hard to watch because either the transfer is not great, or like what am I looking for? The words. The subtitles ain't great either. Like they're not linked up right with the dialogue, or so it's hard to see a lot of his movies because they're just not in great shape. So we have a handful, and I've seen most of them, and they're usually pretty fucking good. Yeah,
I would say this: all the ones that have been released from Criterion, the Apu trilogy, The Music Room, The Big City, Charulata, have all been really good. Even his movie The Coward. Yeah, the short movies. Was like was a special feature on one of them. I can't remember.
I think it's on this movie. It's this movie.
Is it? Yes, it is. Yeah, Copper Rouge, 1965, The Coward, which is his short film. Also starring these same actors, I believe, that were in this film. And I think we'll just go over the actors pretty quickly.
So if we haven't said it out loud, the big city is the one we're talking about today.
Yeah, the big city, or as its original title is, Mahanagar.
Yeah.
Sorry for these mispronunciation of these foreign.
Yeah, we're gonna do our best, and Andrew's better at this, so we're gonna let him do it.
Yeah, so I think I'll go with the two main actors, which is the husband and wife pair in this film, which is really at the center of the plot of this movie, is Anil Chatterjee, who plays Subrata Mazumdar, and Mahabi Mukherjee, who plays Arati Mazumdar.
And she is amazing.
Yeah, she's in a couple of his films. I thought she was in
She's
more
the main actress in Charlotta. And then,
yes,
she's been in I think she was in the Coward, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, she was in the Coward as well. I thought she was in Devi, but I
think the actor is the husband is the husband's in Devi.
Okay, that's what it was. Yeah, he was in that. And yeah, she is phenomenal in these films, and these are early films in her career.
Well, yeah, she's only 21 when this movie was being filmed.
Yeah, and she is still. I mean, she's still acting today.
She's still with us. Yeah.
In Indian cinema. And she's still around, which I think is important to mention because, as this year has told us so far, the year of 2020, anyone can unfortunately pass away at any point, and it's nice to see that she's still around and still acting. So those are the two principal actors in this film. But this film centers around family, and basically, I'll just read this synopsis here, and then we'll dive into the plot. Life at home changes when a housewife from a middle-class conservative family in Calcutta gets a job as a saleswoman. And what is interesting about Satyajit Ray, I think, is specifically geographically and culturally, he's taking a look at the lives of the Bengali people, people from Bengal, and it's very, very interesting because it's not. It's tough to explain because his films have this sense of exploring the culture and its changing aspects, and you really need to kind of go into it and kind of understand where that culture is coming from. Specifically, when you look at the Apu trilogy, which literally traverses like going from like rural countryside to the big city. You know, in this movie, we're already in the big city, but we see the cultural kind of tethers within the people and within the family, and it's really, really fascinating.
Yeah, I mean,
he was born in Calcutta. Actually,
I was gonna say it's good to maybe have a little context of how the world was at this time, and honestly, the way a lot of the people thought when it come to the family structure and how the place of everybody in a family isn't too far off from how it was in America either. I mean, it's definitely a lot stricter, I think. But even back in that time period in America, the husband was meant to be the provider, looked at to be the and run the household, and women were supposed to stay at home and take care of the kids. And
yeah, we'll get into that because it's heavily part of the gender roles. That theme specifically plays a big part in the plot of this movie. And it's heavily, I think, of what he's trying to say and explore in this movie, and then we can kind of take it and what Stephen just said, extrapolate it out to not only the times in Europe or the United States at the time, but literally today, those sense of traditional gender roles still exist within our society, and there's still a lot of tension when discussing and when diving into them. And yeah, so the Bengali people, it's an Indo-Aryan speaking ethnic group native to the Bengal region in South Asia. And yeah, they're kind of divided into several different areas, West Bengal, Tripura, Sambarak Valley, Bangladesh. I mean, it's a group of ethnic people specifically in that area. And that's where, Satyajit Ray came from, and that's where a lot of his movies delve into that culture. Yeah. So, getting into the plot right away, we are immediately... what is interesting is the synopsis of the movie says middle class, and this is not a middle class.
I was going to say, they're definitely... they're lower middle class.
Lower class. Yeah. If anything, they were perhaps middle class at one point, but they perhaps had fallen on hard times.
Yeah.
Now you can make that argument, definitely. So right away in the movie, we get
the husband.
We get an introduction.
Yeah, he's on his way home, and I guess it looks like he's from a long day of work, and he comes home, and really you're just getting your introduction to your family. And the father comes in, and I think he meets his father first as he walks in the door.
Yeah, like his father is the first person he sees.
And it seems that his father and his mother are staying with them because they've had a hard time, so they're having to take on their. They're also
elderly.
Yeah, they're definitely
significantly elderly.
And
I think it plays into that whole, cultural thing. I don't mean to cut you off, but it plays into that whole cultural thing, like when our parents get older, or other family members get older, it's our job, if you will, in quotes, to take care of.
It reminds you of Ozu's what's the movie?
Tokyo
Story. Yeah. Very much of that. Yeah.
Very much of Tokyo Story, and I mean, this is a kind of an interesting connection, going back to what we talked about in one of our previous episodes. Marty.
Yeah.
Marty's tied to his mother, and how he feels an obligation to her. And that obligation, what's interesting, this movie, I believe, is set in the 1950s. Marty also set in the 1950s. Yeah. I mean, like, you see that cross-cultural, traditional values come into play. Yeah. So his father is asking about, like, because he needs glasses, right?
Yeah, his vision's become poor, and I guess he broke his glasses, or he needs a new prescription, and he just needs money to get a new pair. And of course, times are tight, and unfortunately, it seems the father has a gambling addiction of some sorts.
Yeah, apparently he likes to enter crossword puzzle contests to try to win money. And apparently, since his sight is not so good, he keeps fucking messes up on them. He messes up on them. But he also mentions to his son in this opening scene that one of his former pupils, so we know that he used to be a teacher, a professor of some kind, is now an eye doctor.
Yeah.
And he basically thinks that his former pupil will see him for free and give him.
He thinks that he's obligated to do it.
He's obligated to do it, and that's an interesting.
It's something we get back and forth throughout the whole film, but
that plays a big part throughout this kind of B storyline throughout the movie. But I think it's kind of an interesting theme itself. Is is that true, or is that not true?
Where's obligation? Where's obligation and taking responsibility for your own actions end and begin? It's like,
right, and does does a professor or teacher, what is that bond between student and teacher? Does it go beyond the classroom? You know what I mean? In terms of, because he's talking years later. These are all adult people, living off doing whatever. You know what I mean? They're no longer his students.
Well, also
why would they owe him something?
I'm sure they had to pay to be at that, school that he taught at, wherever he taught.
Oh yeah, if it was a private school.
But it's also about where because he feels like his son's obligated to take care of him, he also tries to throw that off on these students and say that they're like his son. He taught.
Yeah, it's honor and loyalty, those things kind of, I think, are in his mindset, and those are kind of probably what is interesting about this movie is it's battling between an old traditional mindset versus the newer modern mindset. Yeah. And just the changing of the times. And that two things are constantly colliding with each other to this day.
He finds a lot of interesting situations in this film to give you new situations to spotlight how the old and the new are clashing.
Yeah, it's like the Bob Dylan song.
Oh, yeah.
Times they are
changing. Yep.
Yeah.
But,
and it's he wrote that back in the 60s, and it's still true.
Still true. But, yeah, so he goes in and sees his family. Right. I think the wife is just kind of, cleaning, and I think the grandmother is cooking, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, and then he has a younger sister who is very young.
Well, I thought it was it was a daughter.
No, it's a sister.
Oh, I thought it was okay. Yeah. So I missed that.
But it's his sister.
But so his sister's sitting there and she's doing work. She's studying to for school and
take an exam.
And this is kind of a first indicator of values from the husband's point of view, is where he's like, why are you doing all that studying? You're not going to need it. You're just going to basically, you're going to be working from home anyway. Why do you need to do all that school and stuff? But
yeah, and so he's like not quizzing her, but kind of like he's drilling.
He's kind of messing with her.
That education is the number one importance, and what we learned is that I believe she goes to a private school as well, and they're like 2 months behind on tuition. We learned that. We also, what's interesting is we also learn. I don't know. This is very interesting, kind of right from the get go. His mother is making dinner, making some type of fish, and she was like, well, Arati, who is
the wife,
his wife, the wife who, and it's like he just straight up insults her like right away, and it shows, because it's like, I don't, because like I think the mother suggests that Arati can like finish off making the food, or that she can make it as well, or something like that. And he's like, no, she can't. And it's like, it's just a straight up, and she's sitting there in the background, and she's just like a straight up insult to her, and it's kind of just interesting. It's like the thing is though it sounds like we're saying he's like kind of an asshole, he's not really. I think the father is, he's obviously some of it's playful. I think you can tell in the body language that, like, he pulls on his sister's hair. He's like messing with her, like saying like, why do you do all that stuff for? And a lot of it's because of how he was brought up, how his dad brought him up. So it's generational. I mean, it's not. It does come out more, but it just shows like there's always a familial tension. I think is a big thing in this movie. There's literally a Cold War in this movie that they mention, and it just like right away there's just a familial tension. Like my mother is a better cook than my wife. And you've seen that kind of trope play out in television sitcoms and things like that. And everyday life and whatnot, but it's just like something that's kind of rather universal as well. And what is interesting, like you said, he is very much his father's son.
Somewhat, I would say he's a little bit more,
because he mentions that.
Yeah, he does, but I think he's a little more obviously a little bit more progressive than his father. I just think a lot of what he has to deal with is his own shame through this movie. He's dealing with his own shame, so. He allows her to do things as the movie goes on because he has no choice, and he deals with his own shame throughout the film. But so they, I guess it goes into she tells him that they had to borrow tea, which is another kind of thing. They didn't have
any tea left.
That, and he of course doesn't like it, but he drinks it anyway because he needs his tea when he gets home, or he's not himself. And they also want flavored tobacco for the mother, and they can't afford that really. But so he decides he'll go and get that, and he pawns off the figuring out the glasses situation for the father on the wife. And
it's like he always listens to you, so you go convince him, you go talk to him basically, and they have a very, loving relationship, if you will. Like she then goes into the other room and she gives him his medication, which he hates, but he takes it because, she convinces him to. Like she, because they have that familial relationship with one another, and there's clearly a bond there as well, which of course gets fragmented as the film goes along, and it's very interesting how. The family seems to be literally very tight. Like they live in very close quarters to one another. Like the place they live in is we only really see 2, maybe 3 rooms. And they're very close quarters, and we in multiple generations. They also have a young son, as well. So we're talking like 3 or 4 generations in the same living space, which is not uncommon today.
Oh no.
So that happens, and. It's very interesting. It's also what's interesting is they also mention at one point
there's a friend that has. This is where it kind of ignites the plot somewhat. Where the husband says that.
Oh yeah, because because they want because the wife suggests borrowing money from their friend.
Yeah.
And she says that
the wife went to work.
He just lost his job, and his wife has to get a job.
Yeah.
And this is where things get ignited.
This is where the idea gets planted in her head. She gets incepted, if you want to put it in other terms. So she's like kind of standing there, and the husband kind of brings it up like cavalier. He's not even really thinking about it. He just brings it up, and then she's just like, what kind of job could I get? Like, I mean, she has a degree of sorts, apparently, or she got 1 year of college.
She had 1 year of college,
and she's just thinking like, what kind of job could I get? And he doesn't really like. He's like, look, you're kind of too smart and attractive. I don't really think you should be getting a job. Like,
we kind of playfully suggest
playfully
that,
does it.
Other men wouldn't be able to work around her because she's too attractive. And it's like, I don't know if that was a joke.
I think he actually believes that, but he also is being very, of course, ignorant because he doesn't really know what's out there for her. He just doesn't want her to do it because he's got his own pride and what should be his job. He feels.
Yeah, there is a serious kind of tone when it comes to this idea, which, from a modern lens seems like that's no big deal. You know what I mean? Like two parents working or two a married couple working, both working or whatever. That's nothing to us, but within the framework, and I think within the context of that culture at that time, and just in that world that we're looking at, it's a huge thing.
I mean, just
like it seems very, very serious.
Yeah, just like in any other, society, the economy and how the world was changing economically, it's gotten to the point where everybody has to have a job. Everybody has to do their part, and that's where they are in that culture at this time. Is a lot of businesses are closing, and everybody has to, the woman has to go to work. And this isn't even just about the rights of women getting jobs. It's just about the pragmatic need of more money coming in.
Yeah, I think, and it just shows you that economic circumstances change over time. And I think just historically and culturally, that area of the world is just starting to come out, after World War II.
Yeah.
After even not only World War II, but like the idea of like, India getting freedom from Great Britain and starting its own country, and there's remnants of that I think we see in this movie in terms of the prejudice that exists between the mixture of cultures, and it's very interesting how, like you said, like the economic circumstances are changing, but I do think it's also about women's roles
Definitely.
in society. And didn't he also mention like kind of the American saying?
Well, yeah,
a woman's place is in the home.
Yeah, and this is where I was talking about
when they're discussing whether she should get a job or not. He's against
and
it.
this is where I'm talking about the influence. I think he decided to use certain American phrases in this movie to because he's he liked that stuff, so he wanted to throw it into this movie because he knew that this was a universal thing, that this situation could be an American movie. They could remake this movie in America, and they probably have in some way. I'm sure we could come up with a movie that's very similar to this one. I mean, for instance, Mike Lee. Was it Mike Lee's movie that just came out? That Sorry I Missed You? Was that Mike Lee?
Oh no, that was Ken Loach.
No, Ken Loach. You're right. Yeah, another British director. That movie's kind of similar to this one in a way, about a father who's trying to get, a job and family situations and keep it together. I mean, it's kind of similar.
Well, yeah, I mean, what is mind-boggling about this movie is the economic struggle of working-class families. It has been persisting forever.
Oh, yeah.
And has only gotten worse as time has gone on. And this film is like, even though it came out in 1963. It's set, I believe, in the 1950s. That circumstance seems to be cross-cultural, cross-generational all the time, regardless of, monetary value and the value of things going up and down and cost of living, all that economic stuff. You can throw that out the window, but the basic tenets of just struggling to survive has always been there. and this film is highlighting that. And it's not like it's not like the husband doesn't have a job, because we know that he does.
He's like an accountant
in a bank.
Yeah.
And he works in a bank, and we'll get into that a little bit later, what happens there. But so they have the discussion about, getting the job, and he's hesitant about it, but she's going to do it anyway.
She kind of, he kind of like says like you said, the phrase about women's places at home. It kind of ends there, and she kind of smiles it off, and then they go to bed, and in the middle of the night, it just hits her, and she's like, "I'm going to get a job." Like, and
I'm going to.
Yeah, and you know what? Women do this. They will decide to make decisions and tell you about them in the middle of the night, so that you're not really paying attention, so that you'll like agree to stuff. They do this.
I think people do that. They all do the time. But I mean, but I believe the next scene is them looking through the want ads.
Yeah, they're looking in the paper, and
but they're trying not to tell anybody. They're trying to be sneaky about it.
Yeah, he's like, don't tell. It's like the sister comes in, and it's like
they try to play it off like they're going to the movies.
Yeah, and the sister comes in and starts snooping around in it, and then she tells them that they're looking for a job for her, and she's like, oh my god, she's so excited for her.
She's all for it,
and she's like, you should be an actress, which is funny.
Be a movie star,
because she is going to be a movie star, and
but what is interesting about that is her excitement and her, just enthusiasm behind it. She's like, she's the next generation of, women or, people, and where this will probably become even more common.
It's an encouraging thing. Like it's
an encouraging sign.
Yeah, for her, she's probably wanting to be somebody like what, she probably looks up to her and is excited to see somebody she looks up to actually get the opportunity she's trying to make for herself. And
because we know that she's going to school, and she's really, really intelligent and really, really smart. We learned that throughout the movie, and we also learn that she's seeking validation from Arati in more domestic.
She also wants to show
like,
that she can be the type of woman she is too, which is a caregiver. Somebody who takes care of people,
right?
And
a housewife, if you will. I know that's a terrible negative term, but it's like, but what is interesting about that is that's a really modern concept where like you can be both.
Sure.
There's nothing out there that says you can't be both proficient in the home as well as well educated and have a professional career. Yeah. There's nothing stopping you from that other than what we see in this movie, this sense of conservative, traditional, gender roles and values and all that stuff, which is still like just keeping people, locked in place, if you will.
People have been have had beliefs and convictions, not even just in this subject matter, that keep people down all the time. We know this.
Oh yeah, they're still fighting about it today. They're still fighting about stuff like that today, and it's never going to end. At least I don't think it's in our lifetimes. But anyway, getting back to the movie. They do end up seeing a job in the paper, but they're not going to tell.
They don't really know what it
is. Right
away.
You
don't really know what it is
until they really know. Basically, until she gets it, they don't tell.
Yeah, I mean, like the ad basically says we need an attractive young woman, which is what he was concerned about. He was like,
the ad is very not suspicious, but it's like an attractive young woman to be a salesperson, to sell some product, I believe. So, and basically she, her husband writes up like an application and she signs it, and she has to go for the interview, which we never really see the interview.
They kind of keep it suspenseful a little bit. She goes and drops it off, and then while we
don't even see her drop it off.
Yeah, we don't even see her drop it off.
Her trip there, he goes with her. What is interesting, I think.
Well, he first it happens, and then you see him at work, and you get to see him at work for a little bit, and then he gets a call from her saying that she got an interview.
Yes.
Yeah, and she's obviously kind of like excited about it, and apparently it's but also nervous, and he's like, I'll go with you, I'll take you there. And then he kind of jokes.
Yeah, but then she's like, you'll be the only guy there. It'll look weird.
Yeah, and then he kind of jokes with her, like, he's like, what kind of questions are they going to ask me? He's like, then he says something that's like, has nothing to do with work, and is like kind of messing with her, and then they hang up, and then
oh yeah, they have a little playful banter. Back and
forth. It's like something he's used to working, and she's not used to it, so he's messing with her to kind of like, because it's no big deal to him. And she's nervous about things that he's like, what? Like, don't be nervous about that. Like,
right.
But so then it goes back, and now they're gonna have they're getting ready for her to go to the interview, and I don't know that. Does the parents know yet? I don't think they don't. I don't.
No, they don't. They don't tell them until
she gets the job.
She's about to go to work.
Yeah.
Until she gets the job, and
so he gets her some new clothes.
Yeah, because she's like, I can't. Because she does. I mean, long story short, she gets the job, and she's going to go to work.
Yeah.
I mean, but she's afraid to show up there looking, not like the other women are going to look, and how it'll impact her job. And he's like, give me a list of what you need and I'll get it and all that stuff. So he's being supportive here at the beginning. I think that's important to note, that he's initially he's hesitant, but then he's supportive, and then things kind of like, disintegrate over time in terms of his
when she comes home saying that she got the job, it almost is like he didn't think that she was going to get it. And he comes in and he's kind of stunned, and then he's like, well, I guess I'm going to have to go in and break the news to my parents. So he goes in right away and kind of just talks to his father. Like, and just...
Man, you might as well have told these people that someone was deathly ill and about to pass away.
Yeah.
Like, that's how serious they take this.
Well, specifically the father.
Someone getting a job.
Specifically the father.
Specifically the father, who... What is interesting is there's an earlier scene between the father and the mother, and where the mother basically says like that we're a burden to them. Like the reason why they can't afford anything is because we came and lived with them. So there's a recognition there of the financial strain that they're probably applying to, their son
it's a
and
weird
his family.
Dichotomy, because it's like the father talks about all this obligation, but he also feels the guilt that he can't take care of himself.
Yeah, he's reached the point where he's past being able to work. There was even a suggestion by the son that his father would start taking on private students again and tutoring, and that really doesn't work because he's too old and ill and can't even see.
It's hard to see. Yeah, but it's funny. It brings up this idea of like compromising your values, and why is it okay for him to compromise how he thinks or what he does, and somebody else can't compromise their convictions. He can compromise his son's life by guilting him into taking care of him and doing things for him, but he can't do what he has to do to keep his family together, which is let his wife go to work, and she's willing to do it. I mean, honestly, there's a lot of questions there that, are still questions that you can talk about after this movie's even at the end. I mean, but after this, go ahead.
So after this, basically, they also suggest that like the Cold War has now started.
Yeah.
Between the parents and their son and his wife, and there's the Cold War being like a separation,
a silent war, a silent war, where nobody's going to talk to each other and nothing, and
the way in which the son approaches it is very
he's
self-deprecating.
Yeah, he's hoping that it'll blow over after a while, that they'll get used to the idea, and he also has basically kind of said that once he gets another part-time job, she can just quit.
She can quit, so it's temporary. So he tries to soften that blow by saying that.
Yeah.
And basically, he said, and then he tells his wife. I think this is how the scene actually ends. That they'll get over once you bring home your first, paycheck, and you buy him glasses.
Yeah. Well, there's a lot of moments in this movie where men like to soften the success of the woman by saying that they allowed them to do something. This happens a lot, and it's true. It happens all the time.
I mean, we'll get to probably a scene later on that definitely is that straight up.
Yeah.
But it's in a way in which you basically.
I mean, he's basically saying, "I'm allowing you to do this because we need it right now, but it's only temporary." Like it's like.
Yeah, but as soon as we don't need it, you can't do it. It's that controlling, patriarchal society thing that, like I said, still persists. But so I guess
we kind of cut to the first day. It's her first. She's obviously nervous.
I think there's some stuff. Yeah.
She got a new outfit. Yeah.
She's about to leave,
and the son's upset.
And the son's really mad that his mom's leaving. He kind of throws a little bit of a
tantrum.
Tantrum. He's mad.
And she promises him toys.
She promises him toys. So he's great now. Yeah. He
gets mad even though she promises him stuff, and then she kind of has to leave, kind of feeling really upset. The husband's going to take her, and then before she leaves, you hear him be like, "So what kind of toys are you going to get me?" And then she kind of turns back around, and they have a nice little moment before she feels better about leaving now. Though the grandmother is still not really talking. That moment helped her start our day. And then I think we get a scene of them on the bus on the way. And there's, I think a nice moment there of her just in her thoughts and him being comforting and being supportive once again, though he's, has his pride. And so then, he drops her off and he goes on to his day. And so he spends the day just kind of like wondering what's going on.
No. He what happens is she goes in, and when we meet the one of the other her coworkers that she's
well, yeah, she meets
working with, who's Edith.
Yeah, Edith is her name.
Edith Simmons.
And
she's more modern right away.
Yeah.
The way she's dressed, the way she speaks like fluent English.
This goes into that multicultural area here where there is some prejudice even within their own.
Yeah, she's Anglo-Indian.
Yeah.
And they bring that up a lot.
Well, the man that runs this business brings that up a lot.
Oh, yeah, he must have a serious prejudice of against Anglo-Indian people of Anglo-Indian descent.
Yeah.
I mean, it seems like
we'll get into it when we get closer to that part, but
but it's just like that prejudice that exists between different cultures intermingling with one another.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Getting married and having kids and descendants and all that stuff. There's still people.
You can even tell with their interaction, the fact that she saw her husband and said, "Is that your boyfriend?" It's like, nah,
that's very modern.
Yeah.
Because she's so young, I think she assumed that was her boyfriend.
Yeah, that she wouldn't be married
as opposed
yet.
to her husband.
And
it's just it's the modern mindset of getting married so young is not, it doesn't commonly happen. Also,
she had a wedding ring too, and that's not really a thing.
She's engaged.
Yeah, she was engaged. I don't think that's really a thing that a lot of Indian. I don't think that they wear wedding bands.
No, they don't. She pointed to what's on her forehead is an indication of her marriage.
Yeah.
I don't want to, I can't remember they refer to what the exact name is. And I can't remember what it is. But that's an indication of being married. Yeah. I believe so. And so, but she doesn't speak English. She only speaks a little bit of English. She only understands a little bit. So, there's a little bit of
they have a good
distance between the two.
Yeah, they have a good banter back and forth with each other, and
they're like in the elevator together and bantering back and forth. This is where you get kind of the difference in the mixture of cultures within that area, because as we said, the Edith Simmons character, she speaks English, but we also know that Bengali is another language that's used. Hindi is another language that's used. So there's a cultural
especially when they get into this
that area.
because she's working kind of in the city, so that's why the melting pot starts to be more evident there.
Right. Not only that, but it's interesting. So we go in. It's basically like an orientation. Yeah. All of the women are there who are going to be selling these knitting machines. I thought they were sewing machines, but I guess they're knitting machines.
Yeah, apparently. Yeah.
Either way, we actually never really see them.
No.
We never really see how they work, but it's not really relevant. It's not really that important. So so they're all sitting there, and we see that all of the other women are, similarly dressed to Arati. So they're more, traditional from that Bengali background. And the one that sticks out is the Edith character.
Yeah.
I think that's kind of important later on. But we learn that they're going to be canvassing kind of upper-class neighborhoods, trying to see the women, the wives that live there, and talk directly with them, and show them the brochure and tell them about the machine, and basically door-to-door salespeople.
And they start out with, I think it was 100 rupees a month. Was their salary
100 rupees a month,
and
which I don't know.
I don't know what that equates to, but it doesn't sound like a lot.
Right. It doesn't. Yeah, I have no idea what that equivalent is to today.
But it's something, and so she goes through that, and as the day goes on, the husband.
Well, what happens?
The husband gets curious.
What happens is the husband calls in the middle of her orientation meeting, and it's like, that's not the best way to start off, but hey, whatever. So he calls, and we see him at the bank, and he's all kind of like nervous and jittery. And there's like a customer there, like trying to talk to him about, this is important, Stephen. Foreshadowing is about to happen. He's the guy who wants to open a bank account, but he's like, man, this other bank closed down. Are things solvent here?
Yeah.
Are things solid here? Because it's a different type of banking system there than I think we're used to in a modern perspective. I'll get into that a little bit later on, but yeah. But he's like kind of brushing the guy off, saying, yeah, we're fine. Whatever,
yeah. I mean, he's got to be. It's his job. He's got to be confident.
Yeah, he's got to get people to open up bank accounts and do business and stuff. He can't be saying, yeah, it's about to fall apart. So
I mean, he doesn't know how bad it is. So I mean, it's not really.
Yeah, he also doesn't know that. But even if he did know that, he couldn't say that. Yeah. Because then he'd get fired.
Sure.
If he got found out. It's kind of like, if someone works at like a Best Buy or a Target or some store and is like, yeah, don't buy here, it's cheaper at that other store down the street. You know what I mean? Like you can't really do that. People do it though. So he calls up to tell his wife that I'll meet you after work, basically. Yeah. And it's an interesting scene. I don't know if it's to me, I read it as part concern for her, but also probably part controlling.
It's part concern, and I think he just, I just think he's curious about he's curious about whether she'll actually be able to get it or not. I think there is some.
Which I think she's already got it. This is her first day.
I mean, there's a relief too. I think
right.
He doesn't want to. I don't think he wants to admit it, but I think there's some relief there.
I think, she's kind of embarrassed by getting the phone call amongst the other
it's
people.
Like when you're a kid and you're like in elementary school and your mom wants to give you a kiss when you're like, it's like that embarrassment.
Still happens today.
Yeah, it still happens today. But after that,
we're both in our 30s, and I'm pretty sure my parents still bother me.
Oh yeah,
still embarrass me today.
They can do that sometimes, but then we also cut to a scene where the grandfather goes to see the pupil, the eye doctor, that used to be one of his students, and this is where we really get into that whole idea of obligation, and his that philosophy also being for him being also the philosophy of this student believes in what he believes, so it sends him on this kind of like mission to all his other pupils, but.
Yeah, so so he basically gets an eye exam and he starts crying in the middle of it, saying, I have no income, I can't afford, glasses, my son doesn't take care of me, and just it's sad, and also kind of
it's sad and also kind of embarrassing.
Yes, that's the term. It's embarrassing. I would say like he's also kind of lying as well, because it's not like the son doesn't want to take care of the
manipulative.
It's manipulative. That's a good word. Yeah. That's a really good word.
Because the things that he probably criticizes his son, which he says, he criticizes his son for not taking care of him, though he's doing what him being in his son's life, having him take care of him is what's making him have a hard time taking care of anybody. Right. And not only that, but like his son is having his wife, well, not having, but his daughter-in-law has to go to work in order to take care of him and his wife. And he's also not...
And he hates that. But he hates that.
Yeah, but he's
like,
also
he's
not bringing any solutions either, because he's gambling money away.
Yeah, it's a catch-22.
Yeah.
You're not going anywhere.
He has criticisms, but he has no solutions to problems.
Not only that, but it's like the solutions to his problems are not the solutions he wants.
Yeah, his
that he'll accept.
His values are getting in the way of progress.
Yeah,
and that's once again, it's very relevant. People stand in the way of progress all the time because of their beliefs.
Right,
and
they're very staunch in their beliefs. Like they can't see out of their little
tunnel
box.
Vision.
They can't see the positives out of the little box.
They're not willing. They're very rigid, and so he confesses this to his pupil, and he basically says, "Look, I'm not going to charge you for this. We're going to get you these glasses. I owe it to you, And
right.
That's exactly what he wanted to hear. It only gave him the fuel he needed.
Validation.
Yeah, the validation he needed to continue to do this and continue to make his son feel bad.
And then but cutting back to her first day, the first house she goes to, she actually gets super, super nervous and super scared.
I also think a man answers the door too, right?
Yes.
She was hoping a woman would.
I just think she's scared in general.
But there was also a dog,
just frightened
of course.
And nervous. She's completely out of her element, and you can see, like, not only like psychologically is she out of her element because it's something she's never done before, but physically, the neighborhood she's going into are unlike anything that she's probably used to before. She went from the big city to literally the suburbs. That's the equivalent I drew from it. And then but she does end up going into another home and pitching this the knitting machine to this wife and whatnot.
Well, she's able to use.
She sets up an appointment.
Yeah, I was going to say she's able to use her. She looks at the situation and you can tell she's got kind of a knack for this, but she sees how much more money these people have and stuff. There is a relatability. There's a child that's very close to what her son looks like that she sees, right. And he has a toy, and and it reminds her of her son wanting a toy, and it's like they're just like us. This woman's got the same problems. She's got a child sick. They're the same people, and they have some of the same needs that we have. I just got to use my relatability as a housewife, my knowledge to help sell this. So
right, and she also noticed that there's some embroidery around. She's like, "Oh, do you do embroidery?" She's like, and the woman's like, "Oh, I haven't done it for years." And it's like, so she pictures her, the machine. It's like you could knit a sweater in an hour or something like that. Like really selling her on things. And of course, the woman's like, "Yeah, I have to see it first." So they set up an appointment for a week, and then we don't really see her doing that for the rest of the movie because, to be honest, I don't think we need to.
No.
What Satyajit Ray does is he establishes certain things, and then we can just come to our own conclusions.
We can fill in some of that stuff with our imagination.
We don't need to see her going from house to house later on. For example, we don't need a montage of her going from house to house and selling, and selling stuff. Even though I think, is there one in there? I can't quite remember.
What's that? A montage?
A montage.
No. Yeah. No. There's some shots of the other women in the group that are going around, but nobody. You don't really. That's the only time you ever see her go in a house and sell something.
Right. And sell something, and then the rest of the movie kind of just like slyly
I think we go
informed.
We go a month ahead. We kind of skip through into her first payday,
and then And not only that, but we like there's hints that she's very successful at this, and that's all we need to know. We don't need to see her being successful at it. We don't need wasted time, basically, of showing her selling machine after machine and demonstrating the machine and showing all this stuff off. All we need to know for the plot's sake and for the character's sake is that she's very successful at this, and this is what drives the plot and the themes forward. And like you said, it goes forward a month. She gets paid.
Right before
the first time?
I was gonna say right before that though. Okay. You get a scene with all the women kind of talking about their job, which is fun.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, the one woman is telling a story about how she was brought in by a man, the husband, and the husband says that he's gonna go get his wife, and there is no wife, and it's it's both playful and kind of scary,
creepy, scary, and modern in the sense men praying after women without telling them. Yeah. You know what I mean?
It also tells you how
like instead of being creepy, he could have just been like, "Yeah, I don't have a wife."
Yeah, it just tells you how scary that
you're
job
very
actually
nice.
could
Would
be.
you like to go out
actually,
sometime?
that job could be very dangerous, actually. But
going door to door selling stuff is probably dangerous.
But
I know they do it during the day because they keep mentioning that they're out of the office by like 10:30 in the morning. But yeah, so they're having a fun like camaraderie type time. And that's important because they decided that they're going to kind of not almost unionize, if you will.
Well, they got Edith. They said Edith has become their to become their
representative.
Spokesman, and go to get them a raise because they think that the $100 they think they need a commission.
They need a commission
because they're selling products. They should get a commission, and so they send her into the boss to plead for money, and they don't get as much as some other people do, but they do get, I think it was 5% off the first 5 that they sell, and then 10%.
And then 10% after that. Yeah. And what is interesting is that she goes into his office afterward as well, and this is where what we talked about earlier, this idea of letting like men almost like feeding into their own egos and their controlling egos and their power trips and all this nonsense where like he tells her like, I was already going to do that. She didn't even have to come in here and do it. That was my idea. If you think that she got one over me, you are mistaken. And it's like, oh my goodness, this guy's got an ego
he can't let the women say that they've earned it in any way.
Yeah, can't give them a victory.
Yeah, but especially Edith, because Edith is somebody that's different from him.
And he even points that out, like why did you guys send her? Is it because she's Anglo-Indian and stuff? Like he insinuates certain things like that, like a prejudice there. And he's like, if you ever have any concern, just come to me directly and we can talk about it and work things out and whatnot, which she does do. Later on
she does,
in the movie.
But then she does get her first paycheck.
Yeah, she does get paid. All the women get paid,
which I think is a great scene. It's a great scene. Yeah, it's a great moment. She goes into the bathroom to kind of have it to herself, and she like pulls the money out and kind of like
she like holds it in the mirror
and smells it.
But what's so beautiful about that scene is Rai is so patient with it.
Yeah,
it's not it's a slow move scene. Like she goes in, closes the door, stands there, then takes the money out, holds it up to herself, then goes to the mirror, looks in the mirror, then holds it and smells it, if you will. And it's just that moment of like victory or triumph or accomplishment.
Yeah, accomplishment.
And the way he plays it, he plays it patiently and for maximum effect.
Yeah. And then Edith comes in and kind of she gets paid too, but she gets like shitty bills, like the bills are like crinkled up and everything,
old bills.
And of course she's so excited, she's like, I'll trade you some,
it's like to her
she don't care. Money is money.
Doesn't matter.
Yeah, it didn't matter what it looks like.
She's technically right.
Yeah,
it doesn't matter
as long as it spends.
As long as the values are the same. Yeah.
But
what is important is this is the scene where Edith gives her a present, gives her the lipstick.
Yeah. That
she ends up using while she's
It's
working.
almost like you could say it's almost like more an empowerment of being a woman kind of ness. Of course, this movie's in black and white, so we don't see the red lipstick, but if you see the poster shows a red lipstick on it.
It does. And not only that, it's a transformative thing.
It is. Yeah. And like I said, it makes her more empowered. It brings her give her more confidence in herself.
But it transforms her into, like you said, more like empowering and powerful, but different. Yeah. But different in a good way, not different in a bad way, which is what her, later on what her husband sees.
Yeah.
Right, which is the negative, while it's a positive thing. But she hides it from him. So she rubs it off before she gets home.
She knows how her husband's going to feel.
Well, yeah, she knows exactly how he'll perceive it because he's from that conservative family. She doesn't wear makeup at all when she's home, and it's because they have those traditional values.
Yeah. So she comes home with
with the money,
with the
and presents
and food, and the grandmother gets the tobacco she wants. He gets like a whole nice thing of cigarettes, and the kid gets a cap gun.
The kid gets a cap gun. The younger sister gets a new like sari.
Yeah.
The dress, if you will. And then the grandfather gets some fruit he likes, but it's also his birthday, and she tries to give him money, and he won't accept it. He won't take it because he knows, because of where it's from is it's from her job, and he
doesn't
disgusted by it. So she's confident, she's jovial, she's she's showing off that not only does she have her salary, but she also has commission money. And her husband, oh boy, this is when the cracks start to.
This is when it really starts happening, because he's intimidated. He's
jealous.
Yeah, he's intimidated by her success. And so he finds the negative things to say in everything, instead of being happy for her and being happy that she can help keep the family afloat. So,
and I believe this is when he wants her to quit.
Well, yeah, he says he called a friend for a part-time job, and said that he's going to be able to get it to him, and that she can quit. So he's going to sign up like he did with the application, type up a letter, and that she could sign it, and he says it's much easier to quit than to get the job.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
I find it also fascinating that he's the one like typing up all of this information, and all her job is to sign it.
Yeah.
I just find that to be very interestingly controlling.
Yeah.
Also, yeah. So
the son gets sick. Also, there's a moment where the son gets sick.
That's later on.
I think that this technically before him asking her to quit. It's technically before that.
Yeah, I think that that whole sequence is when he asks her to quit, and he types up the because she's only been working there like a month and a half, I think, or 2 months at this point, and it's interesting, just like that friction is still there.
Well, when the son gets sick, it kind of adds to it, because he's like, well, you should be home helping take care of him, basically. And it's like, this sends him kind of to the point of like, I need to get a part-time job to get her home, because the son gets angry. The son gets angry that the mother's not around. So he calls a friend and says, can you get me something? And he tells him he can get him something soon. And that, basically that's good enough for him to say, hey, quit. And, so kind of get to that day, she signs the letter and goes off.
We're skipping forward a little bit because I think, that happens. There's also a scene where the father goes to another pupil. And that's in there somewhere.
I think that's a little bit after this.
Yeah. So he types up a whole letter to have her quit, and to hand in her resignation.
Yeah.
So she goes to see her boss, that kind of pompous ass guy, and she's about to do it. But then it's a
great scene. It's a cross
cutting scene.
Yeah, it's a great cross cutting, because it's like, you just don't know what's in it, and it's like, holy shit, like he better fucking call her.
Yeah, so what happens is, like, he's on his way to work, she's on her way to work, and we're cross cutting back and forth, and he starts going down the street, and there's a crowd outside his bank. Yeah. And what's going on? And then, she's going to the office, and she's going to meet with her boss, but then the boss is kind of like, he's on the phone with somebody, and then she's got to wait, and so there's that tension building up.
Yeah, and then he starts complimenting her and telling her how he wants to give her more responsibility.
Yeah, it's like, I want to give you more responsibility, you're doing such a great job, I want you to be like a
kind of a supervisor.
Yeah. You won't even have to go out and sell the machines anymore, you'll be basically managing the people who go out and do it, and she can't get a word in edgewise, but meanwhile, there's a crowd outside of her husband's bank, and what happened is the bank crashed.
Yeah.
The bank doesn't have any money.
Yeah.
All the money that they put into that, all the people who put into it is gone.
Yeah.
So that bank is shut down.
And now there's an angry
people
Bob.
Are pissed,
and they're like attacking him, and
then like he breaks away, and we don't even see how he gets to a phone, but he gets to a phone and he calls. And he gets in hold of her just in the nick of time. She's about to hand in her resignation. And he's like, don't, if you've done it yet, have you done it yet? And she's like, no, I haven't done it yet. And he's like, don't do it. I just lost my job. The bank went under, but don't worry, we'll get through this. So this is when she pulls a power move. And decides to ask for a raise because and she says that my husband just lost his job. You know, he was at the new Barata Bank, I believe it was called, and the guy.
Oh, he asked for like 50 more rupees. You know.
Yeah, and he's like, and he initially. There's a pushback there.
Well,
he's like, you're very intrusive, and being intrusive is probably not the best thing.
Well, he talks about how there's a process to things. He's like, you don't just get raises.
Like,
you know, you need to be here longer before I give you another raise, because how is it going to look? You know.
It's kind of a.
Once again, he's letting you know that he doesn't really have to give you this raise. He's reminding you that there is a process. Now, in a sense, look, if we're being realistic, there is a process. Jobs are not going to just give you raises because of certain situations. Sometimes a work, depending on what workplace it is, might give you an advance on something, but it comes from somewhere, and you don't just get a raise.
Correct.
So, but he decides to give it to her because he believes she's earned it, I guess, but he won't say it that way.
But the way he says it is kind of, he's like, now don't tell anybody I give this to you now, because you know everybody's going to be mad.
Yeah.
It's like, that's such a.
But he kind of gives into it and gives her the raise, and that's when we move to the father scene, where he goes to meet with another former pupil
at his home too.
Yeah.
I believe the guy's
he's obviously somebody that's well known.
Professor or something. I don't know.
But he goes.
He sits that. But he's about to. He's on his way out. Like he's about. Like his wife is like telling him, you know, we're gonna be leaving soon.
It's like they're going to the movies or going to the theater or something.
Or something like that. Yeah. He's like, you know, we're about to leave soon, but there's this old man here to see you, and then they start having a conversation, and you know you
can tell he's like kind of like checked out of it because he already knows what he wants.
Yeah, he gets his father goes into his whole, like, you know, my son doesn't take care of me, and you know didn't I have
well, he goes straight into it, like, don't you owe me this? Basically, he says straight up.
But didn't I have a like
the reason you're the way you are, where you are in life, isn't it because of me? Basically.
Yeah, basically, and it's like, man, it's like a guilt trip, basically.
I mean, it is. Yeah.
And he's like, okay, wait a minute. So he goes over, and then the wife was like. He's like, is somebody? Is he asking for help? And then the guy says something very interesting. He's like, yeah, that's the Bengali way, or something like that. And I'm like, that's very interesting.
It's like because of where he is in life, he allows. It's like he almost allows that traditionalism to continue because it doesn't affect him.
Not only that, but it's like he already knows. It hints at, I think, the idea of within the Bengali culture, there's this sense of community and connection with one another, and that each of you have to help each other out, and that's at least how I drew from it. And he basically goes and gets money out of like a safe or something, and it's a very interesting. Like the wife goes, "You didn't give him 100 rupees, did you?" He's like, "No." He's like, "No," and he shows her, and he's like, "Oh," she's like, "Oh, thank goodness."
She thought it was like 200.
Like, oh, okay.
I think she thought it was like $200 bills, and it was like I guess it was like two whatever other amount.
Yeah,
like
we don't even
lesser
see the
amount.
We don't really see it, but it's less than what she thought.
Yeah,
and she's like, "Oh, thank goodness."
Yeah,
I'm like, "Oh, okay."
Yeah, so because he's basically begging people for money. I mean, it's what he's doing. He's going around and guilting people into giving him some kind of money. And what is he using it for? I don't know. I guess gambling.
Oh, crosswords.
Yeah, crossword gambling.
Crossword gambling. But then there's the scene between where we actually see the father of Arati comes over and basically just criticizes the heck out of her husband for losing his job and for the bank going under, and he's like, there goes 2,000 rupees down the drain or something like that, and he's like, and then the husband says like, I will, I'll pay it all back over time. He's like, that's not the money that matters. It's, you said that it was solid, and he's like, they told me to say that it was solid. Yeah. That's what my manager said to say. They lied to me too, like you said earlier, Stephen.
Yeah.
And it's and you just see how like that shame is just building up.
Yeah,
that embarrassment is just building up.
Yeah, and
it's just eating at him.
Yeah, and so
you know what I mean. And now the and then like at one point, I think Arati's father like says like, "What do you have to say about it?" He points to the other father. He's like, "Yeah, it's out of my hands. No one cares what I think."
Yeah,
and it's like,
and
damn.
Then we finally get to this.
Things are falling apart.
Yeah, and we finally get to this. We get to the scene where he finds the lipstick.
Yeah.
Where so they're like kind of like hanging around the house, and
she's eating. She's on her way to work.
Yeah, and they say something about paying the maid, which I didn't know there was a maid.
Like, I don't know. I don't know where the maid came from. Like, have they been so successful that they could hire a maid?
Well, they've obviously had a maid. I mean, they've had.
I guess
because it seemed like she's been around for a while, but we've never seen her.
Well, I like to think that we're jumping forward in time.
Well, we definitely are like at least a couple months into her job. Maybe I guess they hired one because she's not there.
What's interesting is I don't even think that's important because the whole important part of this scene is the husband finding the lipstick.
It's a reason to go for him to go into her purse. And so he asked her to go into her purse to get the money, which to him is even more demeaning to him.
But the way she addresses him, must like hit him pretty hard. He's like I believe she says, "You're not doing anything. Go go in my purse and get the money." And it's like because he can't do anything because he doesn't have a job. He can't. Remember I think he called his friend again about the job after he lost the one at the bank, and the guy's like, "Yeah, I won't have anything for a month or two." And it's like, damn. So his ego is getting beat up pretty good, and it's obvious, and it's not.
Yeah, he gets the money.
Probably shouldn't be. Yeah. But in his, like I said, his perspective is that, he's been emasculated by his wife.
Yeah, so he's fallen back on his dad's. He's letting his dad's the part that mindset creep into his mind to cover up his own insecurities. But so he, goes in to get the money and finds the lipstick, and of course, just kind of puts it back. And as she's leaving, he kind of brings it up. He's like, "Don't forget your lipstick. You got to put your
like don't forget to put it on."
Yeah, and she has to defend herself, saying, like it's not meant for what you think. Like it's not.
Yeah, but there's an earlier scene that we skipped over that I think is really important too. After she gets the raise, and her husband loses her job, she goes back to that same bathroom and puts the lipstick on again.
Yeah.
And yet again, Rai decides to do it very patiently, very slowly, and she puts it on. And to me, it's another transformative sequence, like a power, almost like putting on like a superhero costume or something.
Sure.
Like suiting up or something like that, a uniform or something that's just like, really puts you in that mode. And now she is the head of her household.
Yeah.
Financially, definitely. And it's a really powerful scene, I think. But later on, now that we're at the scene where when her husband discovers it, she throws the lipstick out the window.
Yeah.
And to me, it's like, I guess she doesn't need it anymore.
Well, yeah, she's got enough confidence in herself now that she, it's like whatever. I mean, you're not gonna bring me down because of your insecurities. I'll just get rid of it.
Yeah, it's like it doesn't mean what you think it means, like you said. It's not a.
It's not for other men. It's not for.
Yeah, it's not. It's not even. It's for her. You know what I mean? It's not. It's not for others. And I think this is where we get to the scene where he sees her like out and about.
Well,
at that restaurant.
No, that's a little bit later. He goes and
a little bit later?
Well, yeah, he goes to visit the Edith, who's been sick.
Oh, that's the next scene she does. Yeah, she goes and visits Edith, who's been out for a few days because I think she went to some type of rally and it was raining and she got sick.
Yeah.
Something like that. And so she gives her her payment.
She gives her some papers
salary.
so that she can hold her, take over her workload while she's out.
Basically, while she's out. But she also gives Edith, I think, her salary or something like that. So now
and then this
Arati's
is where
doing the work of two people.
Yeah.
That's important.
Yeah, it's important. So then this is where the husband, who's, of course, nothing better else to do, so he goes to a cafe and
just hanging out, reading a newspaper.
And this is when he sees his wife in the city, and she runs into.
He doesn't Yeah, she's completely different too.
Well, she's wearing the glasses that Edith gave her. Edith gave her some glasses.
Yeah, Edith gives her the glasses.
Yeah.
And so it's in the cafe. So he's sitting there reading the paper. He sees her outside, and then she starts talking to somebody else.
Some man. Yeah.
Oh, here we go, Stephen. And of course, he has no idea the context of the situation. Yeah. But
he is the husband of somebody he's trying to sell to. Well, he is the husband of somebody she's trying to sell a product to.
Yeah. So it's like it's a business thing.
Yeah.
But he doesn't know that. I mean, and I don't think it's even important that it is a business thing. I think it's important for us to see it, and then for us to see his reaction to it.
It's the reaction to how, in this conversation, she decides to... It's almost the opposite of how the father, the grandfather, has been treating his son. Instead of demeaning him for something that he's done, she's covering up for him, covering up for the reality, like almost like from his point of view, is that she's embarrassed of him. Because he doesn't have a job, and she's saying that he has this very successful export-import business. Yeah,
he has an import business. And the way in which Rai shoots this scene is amazing.
It's amazing. Yeah.
First of all, when she's walking in, with that other, that guy. He has him, behind the newspaper, like hiding himself. Yeah. But the way in which it's done is she's walking across, but we also see him within the scene as well.
Yeah.
And it's just he's using deep focus, which is straight out of Citizen Kane. So I loved it. And then also when they're sitting at the table having the conversation, he's in the background, and we can see his face in focus as well as hear and see their conversation, and just his reaction to it is like shock and dismay and doesn't know how to react. And then the camera moves while she's talking. We can still hear her talk. Moves to towards him, and then we also see his reflection in this beam or something. And man, what a scene!
Yeah,
what a scene! The whole way it's done.
I mean, how do you
patiently?
Yeah, how do you feel about how she handled that situation? Do you think that she was in the right or the wrong, lying and honestly, the way I see it, though, if I was him, I would maybe be a little upset. It's the thing is that all comes down to his pride, and what she's trying to do is to protect what little he has left. By lying, of course, but
right. I mean, she's protecting him. If anything, the way he perceives it, I think, is the way I think generally people would perceive it, is that, she's insulting him by lying, when in fact she's protecting him by lying.
Well, also that maybe...
not only that, but he should be, it's his fault that things are the way they are.
Well, I mean, I wouldn't say it's necessarily his fault. I mean, he got the job.
I mean, the bank going under
is not his fault, but, you could also say that maybe the way, especially in the way she chose to cover it up, in the sense of she could have just said he had this normal job, but she said that he had this very successful job, so it almost makes him feel like nothing that he's even done so far is close to what she was hoping from him as a husband and a provider.
But to be honest, I don't think that she's being that sincere about it. I think she's just saying stuff to close a deal.
Yeah, maybe.
I don't think that she's that sincere in believing that, I wish he had his own business and was super successful.
But from his point of view,
because
thinking from his
that's
point,
never been hinted at.
But
you know what I mean?
I'm thinking from his point of view. He's thinking, wow, she's saying I have this. Is that what she wants? Is that what she wants from me?
Okay. If you're looking at his perspective, I was more looking at her from her perspective.
Yeah, and you'd have to give her that. You'd have to give her that, because she's never come off as being somebody that doesn't love her husband no matter what. So she's not doing it out of pity or she's doing it to protect him. And for him, he's looking at it as nothing. She wants this from me, and I can't give this to her. So he falls even further into shame. And of course he's just getting probably angry. So
that scene happens, and then we get another scene, I think right after this, the father tries to go see another pupil.
This is the third one he's tried to go see, and
a doctor, and he's got to go up this flight of stairs, and he can't make it.
Nope.
He gets to the top, he gets dizzy, and we don't really see what happens, but we assume he falls down.
He topples down maybe a little bit, but you just see his cane fall down the steps,
fall all the way down. And what has happened is that and then we see
the her getting driven home by her boss.
Not only that, but we also see that the father arrives. Beforehand with people carrying him in, and one of them is the doctor pupil. And what we also see is that the husband is just waiting at home for his wife. Yeah. And
she never comes home that late. It's pretty late. It's not as late. It's later than usual.
Later than usual, and the mother asks, did she say she was going to be this late? And he's like, I don't know. And it's he's just sitting there waiting. And then that's when the father arrives, and then the doctor. And this is an interesting scene to me. It's both part funny and part damn, you really shredded this guy. So the doctor examines the father, and the father's like, he's probably old and he's in poor health. We know that. And then the doctor pupil talks to the son. He's like, yeah, it looks clearly like he's being neglected. But
he first of all,
I don't know what your situation is, so I'm not one to judge. But gotta go.
Yeah, like the others, he says, wow. Look, I'm not going to charge you, but I want to let you know that I think
it looks like he's being neglected.
You guys ain't taking care of him well enough, and
then he just bounces. He just leaves.
He's like, but that's none of my business. But I'm going to tell you anyway.
That's none of my business. See you later. And he just basically told this guy he was a shitty son, and then just left.
Well, it's easy. It's easy for people that are in his position that have money. They can easily take care of their family, but. It's it shows the judgmentalness of the class structure.
Yeah, that doctor guy has no idea of any type of context about what this family is going through, what their financial situation is, anything like that whatsoever. They could very well be taking care of he could very well be taking care of his father, but this is the best he can do given his financial situation. But it looks like neglect from somebody on the outside or somebody in the upper class. And it's like you see people prejudge situations and prejudge people all the time. Yes. And it's happening here. So this is when the wife's being driven home by her boss. And I have to say, Steven, of all of the great aesthetics in this movie, the drive home bothers me because that rear projection is so bad.
There's some rear projection. It just
doesn't belong in the movie.
It's also in The Office. You can see out the window that
it's a matte painting.
Well, I mean that it's wobbling. You can tell that it's some kind of projection too because the city wobbles.
Oh, is it projection?
Yeah, I think it is.
I didn't even notice that. I thought it was a matte painting.
It looked like it might have been rear projection too out the window because it looks like it's wobbling a little bit when you look at it.
Yeah, but this looks it looks like something that typically you don't see in a Ray film.
Yeah,
where you don't see that rare projection or really special effects of that kind.
Yeah,
at least I don't.
It might have been something he decided he wanted to experiment with. Because he knows that other filmmakers probably use it, and he's
true. I mean, it's not uncommon for the time. It just looked really out of place to me. But I think it's important to show that she's being driven home by her boss, another man, and we've seen the way her husband reacted to another man, her meeting with another man before, and this idea, the controlling patriarchalness that we've seen throughout the movie is playing right into the plot again.
Yeah,
and so she arrives, and he sees them from the doorway. And then he doesn't.
He kind of just listens to see what they're talking about.
Lurks.
Yeah,
lurks and listens. And then the boss leaves, and then she comes in, and she's like, "Oh, what happened?" It's like, "Oh, Baba, who's the father. He had a dizzy spell and fell down. He was wandering the streets again."
Yeah.
And then it's a really powerful scene here, where the father he actually straight up says he's like, physically I don't feel pain. But mentally, he's in anguish. That's not quite the words he uses. I'm paraphrasing, but it's basically that. And he believes that he should be punished.
Well, he starts to feel that the way he's been acting has led to a worse result, and that he's been judging. I think this in a sense you could see that there's a little bit of a coming to a head. The content that's been between his daughter-in-law and him have come to a head, and he feels guilt for how he's treated her, and they have this kind of like silent apology moment where he's like, I feel like I need to be punished. What can I do? Whatever punishment you say is necessary. And she just kind of is like, look, I don't want to make you suffer. You're an older man. Just take your medicine, and I'm going to give you your medicine, and you're not going to complain when I do it.
Well, but it's not quite that harsh. But he asked, like, Arati, what is my punishment? And she says, just to take your medicine. Yeah. It's a very,
you can tell
loving scene. The way you're saying is like she's
there's
like,
a
take your
lightness
medicine,
to it.
old man.
She's not being like stern, but she's being light with it when she says like, you're not going to complain, you're going to take it, you're going to.
I think she's being extremely compassionate.
No, she is.
The way I read it, yeah.
And they know each other. They have a banter.
Yeah, and it's like that bond that's there before, which has been severed because of her getting a job, which goes against his beliefs, is now, I think, restored in a way.
Yep.
And that storyline kind of ends right there, actually.
Yeah.
So I believe the next scene is when the husband decides to go meet the boss.
Yeah,
right?
yeah. This is when the husband sees the boss. He's kind of, now that he saw the boss bring her home, he really needs to get in close and see what the hell's going on here. So he goes to see.
He has suspicions.
Yeah, so he goes kind of behind his wife's back and goes to see the boss, and he's kind of starts off the conversation talking about how he obviously knows more about the husband than he knows. So he's like, "You're from the same neighborhood basically as me." He's like, "You're from the same area." So this shows you how much he values the where you're from and your culture, your ethnicity. Like, so he's like, "Look, we're from the same neighborhood basically. I'm going to help you out, help you get a job."
There's the camaraderie there. Yeah. There's a friendliness there that I don't think the husband was expecting.
Yeah.
And he also praises, Arati, praises her for her work, and he's like, yeah, she's a very
efficient.
He calls her efficient, which I guess it's not a great compliment, but it's not a bad compliment, but it's kind of like
it's the only one he gives her.
Yeah.
It's the word he uses every time that she's efficient.
Yeah, intrusive isn't really a compliment, you know what I mean? Or impulsive isn't really a compliment. So I guess efficient is the best compliment that he says. But he also thinks that the husband's there to ask for a job or something like that. But he says like, but then they end up coming to an agreement. He's like, hey, come back at 5 and
we can talk more about it. Yeah,
we can talk more.
Yeah, we can figure out because he doesn't agree with husband and wife working in the workplace together. So he's got to look outside of that current location for something else that will fit for him,
or like someplace else where because he probably knows other business owners and stuff, connections and whatnot. So he's gonna come back at 5, but then Arati comes back into the office, I believe towards the end of the day now, and actually no, before that, Edith comes. Yeah. She's back at work, well,
this is when basically she comes into the office and Edith is crying.
No, but Edith does come into meets with him and he fires her.
Yeah.
There's that scene.
Well, you don't really see it happen, but she.
Yeah, we see. Oh,
it cuts away.
No, she walks in and he says, "I have to talk with you."
Yeah, it cuts away.
And then we see her crying in the bathroom.
Yeah.
That's how it is.
Yeah.
And then Arati sees her crying, and then we find out that she just got fired, and that she's not happy about it, and she
kind of brings up the fact that
he doesn't believe that she was sick. And,
well, yeah, he said that because she was out so much that she was out doing things she shouldn't have been doing, and that's really what she was doing, and
basically skipping work and doing whatever that he probably else doesn't approve of and whatnot. I mean, it's probably part of his prejudice towards Anglo-Indian people. But in the meeting with the husband, he also says, because the husband says that she's been working late, and he's like, yeah, someone else, one of our other workers, an Anglo-Indian worker, has been out the last couple of days, but sick. But I don't think she's really sick. But your wife's been doing the work, doing her work too. That's why she's getting home so late. Yeah. So that plays into it, and it very much plays into the next scene where
you could also say that because he's helping her husband. That he's looking at this as like a I mean, especially if he hires him within the company somewhere, is that he's got to get rid of somebody to hire him. If you look at it that way.
Well, what we literally learn, I was actually just getting to something similar to that, is she goes in to confront him, and she's like, were you saying bad things about her?
Did you insult her?
Did you insult her? She wants him to apologize, not necessarily hire her back, but I think apologize.
And this is
and he won't do it.
Yeah, I mean, he very much says, look, this isn't how you treat your boss. If you were on the other side of this desk, you could talk this way. But this is my workplace. I can basically treat my employees the way I want to treat them, because I pay you.
Yeah, but he also mentions this. He's like, because you've been so efficient, because you've taken on her work and have been so successful at it, I basically don't need her anymore. So it's because you've done so well, yet again, kind of placing the blame on
somebody else,
someone else, or like, kind of putting,
he's displacing the blame once again.
Yeah, he basically says, because you're so good at your job, and
he's trying to compliment her, backhand compliment her. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a backhand compliment. I don't need her anymore because you're doing her work just as good as she is. And it's like, I can't afford to pay her, basically. But it's also kind of, I mean, I don't know. Maybe I'm reading into it a little bit too much. It's kind of like a backhanded compliment at capitalism.
Yeah.
Where, like, if a boss or a company, corporation or whatever can pay somebody to do the work of two people and just pay them one salary, it's better for them than paying two people to do the same work at double the salary, or, two salaries. And that's kind of the way capitalism works, is make as much money as you can, any way that you can. And if it's cheaper, that's the better for you. Yeah. And it's kind of the way that business is, and it's a cruel world. And she's learned, I think it's hitting her that the working world can be a very cruel world.
But the great thing about this ending is that she doesn't let she's not letting that world change her values. And so in this scene where he's like, the boss is like, look, how you're talking to me, you're compromising your own job by talking to me the way you're talking to me. And also compromising, he kind of brings it up, your husband, who I might get a job basically for. And so
that's kind of a backhanded threat.
Yeah, it is. Oh, it definitely is. And so he's, after he says all that, she just says it. He's like, look, are you going to apologize or are you not going to apologize? And he's like, it's like, nope.
Forget about it.
Nope. And then she
hands him that
resignation that's still in there. And
the whole time.
I love it. She's like, change the date.
Just change the date. It's a great line. She walks out.
Yeah. And
she walks out.
And it really...
And then she meets her husband, who's on his way in.
Yeah. And I just love it because, like I said, I mean, she's somebody that's not compromising who she is. She goes out to do something she really wanted to do, but didn't change herself to go do it. And then, it's sad that she had to lose something that she was really good at. But then in this last scene, which is... It honestly made me emotional in the last scene. It does every time. I've watched this movie 3 or 4 times now. And every time it gets me a little emotional. But the husband meets her outside and she's crying because she lost the job and how she feels like that, the position she's put the family in because she lost, because she's the provider. And, he just kind of stops her and says, look, we're in this together, and that's what kind of brings her back because he's been so distant, because of his, how he's been guilt tripping and just intimidated by her. And so he's like, look, we're in this together and you're not alone and we're going to find a job. We're both going to find a job again. He didn't just say him or her. He says, we're both going to find a job.
Yeah. And she mentions the idea that this is the big city.
Yeah.
That the city is so big and that there must be jobs for both of us.
Yeah.
And he realized that she has shown great courage in not, giving in to her boss. So if anything,
he says it's something
he's intact.
He's like, it's something I couldn't have done.
Yeah, basically, it's probably something he couldn't do. I mean, literally, his boss has screwed him over.
Yeah.
And so they walk off into the streets together, and that's how the movie ends.
Yeah.
Hand in hand.
Yep. It should. I mean, it ends on that kind of hopeful note that, you know, as long as they are together, that's what's they're going to get through anything, and that they believe in that, and that's, I think, what's very important about the end of the movie, the moment we leave on there, and that sometimes, you know, obviously, you know, this movie is mostly a lot of it deals with like we said, the social structure of a family like this in this time period, in the context of that time period, and it looks like that they've all grown from it by the end of the movie. I would say the only one that hasn't really grown maybe is the son, because he's still asking for toys. But no, I was kidding. But
well, yeah, I mean, the one thing is like I think the son. Well, there's also, I mean,
that was just a joke, by the way. It's not. That's
yeah,
not
I know.
important.
There's the scene I didn't mention where the sister character like made like a portion of the food, or she worked on the food or whatever, and she asked Arati, you know, how is it?
Yeah.
And Arati goes, "You passed."
Yeah.
And she goes, "Oh, I passed." She's like, "Oh, only passed."
Also
like
another nice little foreshadowing moment that happens through the movie is on the first day he takes her to work. He talks about how her hands are like cold, and he said that there's only been one other day that's happened, and that was when their wedding day. And so it's like a nervousness thing. But at the end of the movie, when he grabs her hand, he's like, "Your hand's not cold." He's like, "Nope, it's not," because she's not nervous. She has
she's overcome
her fears. She's more confident in herself, and she feels more confident in probably more confident in their relationship after this. And they, you know, I thought that was a nice little moment added into that too, with the hand thing. So that's The Big City from Satyajit Ray.
Yeah.
And
that is 1963 Satyajit Ray's film. This is an early film from him.
I think this was
his career. Yeah,
right after the Apu trilogy, I think, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, so it basically, there's, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay, I lied. 7, 8, 9, 10. This is his 11th film. I lied.
It's still pretty. I mean, some of them are short films. Yeah. Some of them are.
Well, keep in mind, I mean, Pather Panchali came out in 1955, and The Big City came out in 1963. So we're talking within his first 8 years of his career, which are packed full of great films.
He was doing movies up until the 80s.
I think he did one right before he passed. Yeah, The Stranger came out in 1991, and he passed away in 1992. So, he was doing films from the 50s to 1991. Yeah. And, he's an all-time amazing
And I'm sure we're going to come back to him at some point.
I would believe so, but this film specifically is highly regarded. At the time, it won the Silver Bear for Best Director at the 14th Berlin International Film Festival in 1964. It was, I believe...
It was the Indian submission for Academy Awards.
Yeah, and it didn't get nominated. And I really need to go.
We need to know what else was nominated.
Yeah. I mean, it's very interesting. I mean, obviously everything is perspective, but it's kind of fascinating that we see things like that. Well, it's but it's also, you know, it's in the Academy archive now. You know, it actually didn't come out in the United States till 1967, and that's when you got to see. That's when you got to see like people like Roger Ebert and Pauline Kael. Got to see it for the first time. Okay, so here are the nominees for the foreign language film of that year, 38th annual Academy Awards. You know what won that year is 8.5.
Okay, well,
Fellini's 8.5. Knife in the Water was nominated, which is Polanski's first film, I think. These three other films I don't think I've seen. The Red Lanterns, which was from Greece, Los Tarantos, which is from Spain, and then Twin Sisters of Kyoto, which is from Japan. So those were the nominees.
Though I'm not a huge 8.5 fan. I mean, I know people love that movie, so
right.
But I think that this movie maybe should have slipped in there somewhere. But I haven't seen them other ones.
Those other films.
So.
Yeah, I mean, I've seen Knife in the Water and I've seen 8.5. So that's very interesting. So yeah, that's the big city. I'm assuming, like Steven said, we're going to come back to.
We'll spread it out. I mean, there's we got tons of things to go around, and eventually, I mean, I'm very much hoping we're going to get some more Satyajit Ray on Blu-ray, because there's not a lot. I mean, Criterion's got their releases, and that's about the only really selection we have.
What is fascinating to me is that I got so many comments on my YouTube video saying, "You're only discovering a Rai for the first time? It's like I used to find his movies at the library years ago." And I'm like, really? Okay. It's like, it's just like, I think he should be taught more in film schools and film classes. Like, if I was teaching a film class today about like foreign language cinema or something like that, I'd go right to, maybe not show everybody the Apu trilogy, but probably the first film, at least in that trilogy, or even cut to the big city and show them that. If I was teaching a foreign language film class. I mean, I know everybody goes to, like we said earlier, like the European foreign language cinema seems to be everyone's introduction for the most part.
They go to the French New Wave.
And then, of course, you get French New Wave. That's the way. Mine was Italian neorealism, then the French New Wave, and then, of course, Kurosawa and stuff like that. But I didn't hear about. I had to hear about Rai on my own.
Yeah.
I didn't hear about him in any type of film classes or film books or stuff like that. But I know he's highly praised by many, many, generations of filmmakers and film fans for obvious reasons.
Yeah. So we will. That is it for this episode on that. Now I had to think long and hard.
Oh, here we go.
I was thinking about this, and I'm thinking about, what we've been talking about lately. Like I said, we've been talking about mostly great movies and hidden gems, and I wanted to loosen us up a little bit. I think we've been doing heavy topics the last month, with the last couple films we've done. This isn't like some Oscar-winning movie, or this is just a random comedy that I want us to talk about, because it's one I enjoy, and I don't think people talk about this comedy as much as maybe it needs to be talked about, and that is Harold Ramis's Multiplicity.
Wow. Wow. You know what? Here's something nuts. I almost watched this the other night.
Did you almost watched it when?
The other night.
Oh, did you now?
When I was like, because usually, when you're finding something to watch and you don't have any pre-planned stuff, you just kind of think of stuff, and I'm like, Multiplicity. I remember Steven talking about that movie once upon a time.
So have you seen it?
No, I've never seen it.
Okay, well, there you go. We try to do that. We try to pick movies the other person hasn't seen, maybe, if we can. But yeah, this is one that I've seen since I was a kid, and I love this movie. It's got Michael Keaton and Andie MacDowell in it, and basically, in a nutshell, Michael Keaton is like an overworked father who needs help, because he's losing touch with his family. So basically, he gets cloned, and then he gets cloned again, and so there's multiples of him, and it's wacky, and it's fun, and it's one of the movies. This is kind of in the prime of Keaton. He had just had your Beetlejuices and your Batmans, and this is right after, I think, Batman Returns, and he's one of the big actors, and gets to show off his comedy chops in this movie, and
again,
it's amazing to me. And like I said, Harold Ramis directed this. He's of course he's passed, but he's made a lot of great comedies, and this is one of my favorites of his. So I'll be excited to talk about Multiplicity next couple weeks. So. Yeah.
Sounds good.
Cool.
What am I gonna say? No, never.
Yeah, well, you have no choice, son of a bitch.
I have no choice.
No, I was kidding.
I know.
But where can we find you, Andrew?
You can find me on Twitter at Capzilla06, as well as my YouTube channel, Capzilla Productions.
And you can find me on Facebook, Stephen Billings. You can find my Instagram. My username is Cinema Discovery Project. You can find me on Letterboxd at Cinema Discovery. You can find the audio for this podcast on Podbean and Apple Podcasts. That will be it for this episode. Thanks for listening, and hey, keep on watching them movies.
I know I will.